Hi, everyone, and welcome to this presentation. I'm Kate Kiama, the Director of Programs at She's the Fast. We are an international organization that ensures that girls everywhere are educated, respected, and heard. Today, we are excited to launch our Listening to Girl Toolkit, which is co-developed with our partners and friends at Maya Impact in Guatemala. This toolkit is aimed at strengthening grassroots community-based organization with practical tips and steps on how to integrate girls' voices into programming through the use of focus groups. First things first, there are several ways to get insights as to the effectiveness of your program. For an organization that works with girls, incorporating girl-centered design principles in your programming will help you figure out what's working well, what's not working, and how to make these adjustments. It is imperative to point out that girl-centered design follows three fundamental principles. That's designing with girls, listening to girls, and implementing with girls. Holding focus groups with girls in our programs is one of the best practices to girl-centered designing. You may also want to hold a focus group if you are designing a new project or a new program to better understand the landscape and design the program with girls' felt needs at hand. This could also be useful to understand your current programs and to better figure out what are the drivers for success in these programs. Focus groups are used exclusively to gain insights into the experience, opinions, beliefs of your constituents, and they are the most useful when you're trying to understand the nuances in your programming. The aim of these sessions or the sessions of focus group, it's important to point out, is not for group therapy or to debate the correctness of perceptions or your participants' opinions, nor is it a learning space. In fact, it is rather a space to be able to get new ideas and insights of your participants on the questions at hand or your line of inquiry. So what factors should you consider when you're thinking about setting up a focus group? It is best to limit the focus group, to limit the scope of your focus group rather. You may want to work with your team and your leadership to prioritize the issues that you want girls in your program to help you get clarity on. Perhaps you'd like to understand why there is such a huge drop-off rate in your programming, for example, or to better figure out what obstacles girls are facing in your program as they graduate and as they begin to start seeking employment. You want to limit the big thematic areas to one or at most two issues to help the participants be able to contribute meaningfully to the issues at hand and not to feel too overwhelmed. So our suggestion is that you want to limit your scope to enable you to help also better profile the girls that you will be willing to engage in the focus group. Next, you would want to think about the budget. While focus groups are designed to be low in cost, it's important to think about your budget before you start thinking about hosting a focus group. Once you know how many participants you'd like to have and how many facilitators you'll need, you can determine your cost. Some of the suggested budget lines that you might want to think about is the venue, if you need to be able to hire one, the cost of reimbursing participants' transportation to and from the focus group is something you definitely want to think about, as well as the cost of providing snacks or refreshments for your participants. You may also want to think about the facilitation fee for the moderator and the assistant moderator as some of the budget items you want to focus on. While we do not recommend paying participants or giving them gifts for their time, because that can often influence the answers that they give you, we do suggest that you do provide them with snacks and refreshments as also a part of a girl-centered programming by making sure that you try and facilitate their transport and make sure that they have refreshments, especially for the time that they've taken. If you don't have a huge budget allocation for this activity, you might want to think about finding ways to cut on costs. For instance, you might want to think about asking a board member perhaps to donate their time to be able to facilitate the focus group as opposed to hiring a moderator. You could also explore options of hosting the focus group online and reimbursing participants with data as opposed to paying for the cost of venue, especially during these trying times of COVID. Finally, do ensure that you get parental consent if you are intending to work with girls under the age of 18. Do obtain informed consent for girls above the age of 18. And this is also crucial to ensure that it's a matter of best practice that we're incorporating, getting both informed consent and informal consent, especially from girls as well. Do also think about the venue and timings that are appropriate to girls. Avoid instances where girls have to travel at night to and from the focus group, and ensure the venue is easily accessible, safe, and well known to girls and parents. A big piece of running a successful focus group is selecting the moderator and the assistant. Remember, the moderator is particularly important for them to have great interpersonal and intrapersonal skills, and they must be mentally prepared for this role. They should demonstrate adequate knowledge on the topic and should be able to exercise control over their own biases and opinions. In addition, the moderator must be demographically similar to the participants as practical as possible. Remember, the moderator is responsible for ensuring that all questions are tackled within the allocated time frame, while the assistant's role is tasked with ensuring that all deliberations are captured and the discussion is taking place. Where practical, choose a moderator who's not part of your programming. For example, if you have a sister organization, you might want to ask a mentor from a different organization to come to just enhance the objectivity. Now, let's unpack the magic of the actual focus group. A focus group should typically have between 8 to 12 girls in each session. You may want to plan to have between 2 to 3 separate sessions, which will take not less than 45 minutes and not more than 90 minutes. The timing will vary slightly depending on the number of participants in your focus group. While we encourage you to have between 8 to 12, in your recruitment process, you might want to recruit more girls just to be able to add as a buffer, especially for the drop-off rates. Usually, it's advisable to run more than one focus group with different participants of girls to get valid results. One way to check that you have been able to sample enough girls or enough groups is when you're no longer hearing back new ideas or insights from subsequent groups. This is where you're able to reach critical saturation points. When you are thinking about the focus group, you definitely want to think about developing a selection criteria to help you choose girls who are either part of an existing programming or part of a new project that you want to pilot. Girls in each focus group should be similar in terms of age, their social economic status, their marital and their school status, to just make sure that they are comfortable and open to sharing their lived experiences within the group. If you are recruiting girls in an ongoing project, do factor in the duration of their involvement in your project. Do also think about things like power dynamics and cliques to make sure that you're selecting the right girls in your program. For example, you want to think about, would girls be open to sharing if they had, for example, a prefect amongst them? Or would I be willing to share my own felt experience if I've been in the program for 2 weeks vis-a-vis my peers or my colleagues who have been in the program for 3 or 4 years? Girls in new projects can be recruited through use of flyers. You might want to use nominations, recommendations, or through random selection processes to get the right set of girls. While you can organize several focus groups to represent girls of varying backgrounds in your program, it's important to note that you do not need to include all girls in your program. The goal is to include enough girls of varied experience to have a reasonable sample and not to speak to each girl individually. We do encourage you to use your own expertise on how to go about choosing the sample of representative participants. The purpose of the focus group, remember, is to stimulate rich and exciting conversations that present new information to you as a program practitioner. So it is in the interest of the moderator to ask the right questions to be able to elucidate this kind of insight or combined harvesting. Think of the moderator like a detective. She wants to ask questions that will help her better understand what her participants are thinking and why they hold certain views without ever guiding them to a correct answer. The aim of the session should not be to correct the perceptions, not to get a right answer from your focus group participants. All participants should be expected or should be encouraged to respond to questions if they so wish. The questions you want to pose should be clear and easy to understand. Avoid compounded questions that require multiple responses. Instead, break down the questions into parts. Remember, the moderator should typically want to ask between 8 to 12 open-ended questions that require mental work from the participants. As much as practical, each question should be followed up with a probe to elicit more information, especially if information that will help clarify a position that the participants hold. You might want to ask follow-up questions such as, what makes you say that? Or tell me more about, as good follow-up questions. Generally, there are three types of questions. They are open, closed, and short answered questions. Open questions are non-judgmental and encourage a longer explanatory answer. The majority of the 8 to 12 questions in the focus group should be worded using this style. A few phrases that will usually suggest an open-ended question begin with the phrases such as, tell me about, how might, where might, what could a girl do, etc. Closed questions require a specific and closed answers. They generally result into a yes, no, or maybe type of response and must be used sparingly, if not at all, in a focus group. As a rule of thumb, participants should be encouraged not to respond in such a way as well. The exception to the rule on when you might want to use this is when the moderator is seeking additional follow-up information from a previous question. For example, a moderator may have asked a group of girls which sanitary products they are aware of in the market that they or their peers use. The moderator may then ask a direct question following up to that question, such as, do you always buy the same brand? Remember, closed questions lead the moderator to do all the mental work and limit the participant's response, as seen above, which is why we caution that they should be used very sparingly. Questions that begin with do you, have you, could you are often closed answer questions. Short answered questions, like the closed answer questions, lead the moderator to share the mental work with the participants, and they often lead to short responses. Examples of closed or short answered questions begin with phrases such as, which do you prefer, who, where, when, or how many. We will also caution on this line of questioning and offer that it may be used sparingly when running focus group on new program design. For example, if you want to better assess what are the best timings and venues to host a program, should you be able to set it up in this community. That's a very specific need. You might want to ask that type of questioning just for those that specific scope. A good tip on questioning technique is also to depersonalize the question so that the participants can feel that they do not need to be overly vulnerable. For example, you might always want to ask questions about what girls feel with their peers or their classmates as opposed to posing the question directly to them. For example, instead of asking a question such as, have you experienced violence at home? The moderator would ask, what kind of violence do you think is most common to girls in your age? While girls might typically respond to these kind of questions with their own personal experience, it gives them the option of creating a form of distance and places less pressure on them to really to reveal their own hardships or their own experiences. Instead, girls can talk about girls my age might experience X, Y, Z, while you still you as a program participant, you or the program officer, you're still able to get the relevant information that you need. Remember, focus groups are used exclusively to gain insights into the experience or opinions of your constituents. Your objective is to understand why your participants hold certain views and beliefs, and is not the opportunity to correct or teach participants. And doing so in such a forum would be not only counterproductive but is also ethically wrong. For the next segment, we will discuss the practicalities of how to actually run the focus group, how to gather data, and how to feed back or to feed forward to the girls in your focus group. For the actual focus group, the moderator and the assistant moderator should endeavor to arrive early. You should endeavor to create name badges, not only for the moderator and the assistant moderator, but also for the participants in that focus group. You might want to play appropriate music just to create an ambience. If you have participants who are younger girls, you might want to have a coloring station or mandalas that they can be able, for early arrivals, they can be able to be engaged in an activity. However, do remember to store away these extra materials and turn down the music when participants do arrive. We encourage that you set up the setting in a circular format just to enable the moderator to have eye view and to maintain eye contact with all the 8 to 12 participants. Sitting in a circle also creates the form of equality, that everyone feels they're part of the collective and that they're equal. You do also want to make sure that you have checked the area, that the washrooms are accessible, they're open and they're clean, that you have a water station, for example, refreshments have been set up, that you have also been able to get the consent forms from the girls as they arrive. When participants arrive, do encourage them to introduce themselves and share their name or a pseudonym that they would want to be referred to. Encourage all participants to also wear their name badge or their name tent. You definitely want to go through the logistics, talk about the agenda, how long the session will take place. Remember, we say between 45 to 90 minutes, and any other follow-up details that would be relevant for girls. Do also get informed consent from the girls, especially if you're going to be using a recording device, such as a dictaphone, to be able to and explain why it's important. Often the assistant moderator will just want to have an extra layer to be able to document and to record information in real time. Next, you definitely want to spend a bit more time coming up with group norms or group collective agreements. You want to find out, how do participants want to engage? Do they want to raise their hands? Do they want to go in a chronological order when responding to the 8 to 12 questions that we shared? Remember, as a moderator, you should definitely try and make sure that all participants are engaged in conversations. And part of the group norms would be figuring out, how do you draw, especially the more introverted people in the group, to feel that they're part of the collective. So to recap, these are a couple of the things that we have talked about. You definitely want to arrive early, make the participants feel welcome, make sure that it's a safe space and create that safe ambience. Remind them that this is a confidential conversation, and especially if the participants are in part of ongoing projects, that whatever they say will not work to their detriment. Create group norms and make sure you share them. Conduct an icebreaker before you go into your 8 to 12 questions, just to make sure participants are at ease, and build on participants' answers as a moderator as well, to just make sure that participants feel that they're actually being heard and that you're building up participants' questions and seeking clarification. Lastly, you definitely want to thank participants and make sure that you do follow up with insights and feedback at an appropriate time. After all focus groups have been conducted and concluded, remember we say that you should try and aim to have between 2 to 3 focus groups. And depending on the topical area that you're trying to discuss, you will reach a critical threshold where you're no longer hearing new ideas or opinions or insights from your participants. That's when you know you've had enough focus groups. We do not encourage you to have only one focus group because you want to be able to also check the validity of the data you have in. When all focus groups have been conducted, the moderator and the assistant moderator should definitely come together to compile their notes and transcribe their tapes where appropriate. If you're having more than one focus group, we encourage you to do that as soon as possible to make sure that there is no data that's getting lost because of memory loss. And to also just make sure you don't have information gaps in your data. If you have different moderators and assistant moderator for each focus group, you might want to bring them all together in one space just to be able to make sure that this data collection point is happening at the same time with the people who worked on their focus group moderation. It's easier if you could be able to collate data based on all the questions that you asked. So you can either do it on flip charts or and move it to a more permanent form like a spreadsheet, for example. But in each of the 8 to 12 questions asked per focus group, you want to be able to document what was the response for each of the participants in each focus group for each question. So you will have a big spreadsheet, but the intention of this is to help you be able to draw out the themes that have come out from the focus groups that you have held. After you have been able to put up all the data in a spreadsheet or in a flip chart, you might want to invite someone who was not either part of the focus group and part of this data collection to be able to help you figure out what are the themes that you may have missed out because of they have maybe better objectivity in this process. So taking a step back and having someone else be able to come in might give you fresh insight, especially on the themes that you're trying to be able to nuance from the groups that you've had. So you definitely also want to reflect and write down prior to diving more deeply into your findings. It is crucial to find a system that works for you and that will enable you to analyze the information from all your focus groups. We encourage you to label the spreadsheets on a paper or a flip chart with the focus group number and create rows for each question asked. So as I mentioned, question by question, you will be noting the responses and the aim is to be able to just make sure you're capturing that all that was said in all the focus groups into one space. Finally, you might want to be able to have 2 to 3 people be able to now flesh out better data been after the whole collection or has been, you want to be able to make sure that you have a smaller team that can be able to work to synthesize the data and draft a summary of each responses and pulling out powerful quotes where appropriate for later placement, especially in a larger report. Once you have synthesized your data and you're ready to present your findings to your organization or relevant teams, you definitely want to also be able to share what are the possible changes to your program delivery to address the issues that were raised or that came out from the girls in your program. This, for example, could be the basis of increasing a budget line for specific activities or to make the case for either scaling up a program or scaling down a program. Finally, we encourage you to draft a full report with the findings where you can either put it in a narrative format, which will include a summary, the background, the methods used, the findings, conclusions, and the recommendation. This information, if well packaged, can help you show the effectiveness of your programs to donors and to supporters, or can be a strong basis to help explain a new course of action for your program. Remember, our participants and the girls that we use in our focus group are not tokens. It is important to communicate to the degree possible to them what changes you're making in your program as a result of their invaluable time and insights. When focus group participants' response guide a new program and a new program launch, it's also very powerful to share with the girls in the focus group the details on the expected program launch date and how they can be involved, and then how they can reach you for more information or details. This is really important for us to close the loop, especially when working with girls, not to use them, get their insights and their ideas, and not feed back to them. So we encourage that we feed back to girls and share with them to whatever degree possible what decisions are being made, especially for existing programs based on the insights they share. This will also help subsequent focus group participants be open to sharing. You can imagine if you ask girls to participate in a space, share insights, and no one comes back to them, they don't see any changes. In subsequent focus groups, they might be a bit resistant, or there might be more resistance to sharing information. Listening to girls is an important practice we should incorporate in our program cycles. We encourage you to find new and innovative ways to bring girls' voices and experience in your decision making process. We look forward to hearing how they've helped your organizations grow, and we are definitely certain that listening to girls through focus group will provide you with invaluable feedback and feed forward, which will not only strengthen your program, but also continuously put girls at the front and the center of the work that we do. A full copy of the Listening to Girls Toolkit, which is developed by Shiza Fast and Maya, which is a step-by-step guide on how to effectively strengthen your programs by adding girls' voices into our programs, can be found in the links provided below. The toolkit is available in both Spanish and English and includes additional resources such as a sample agenda for the focus group, a sample consent form that you can send to girls' parents and guardians, and more details, especially about the lines of questioning and questioning techniques, as well as a case study on an actual focus group conducted by Maya with their girl pioneers, which you can all find as addendums to the toolkit. Thank you very much for your time. We hope that this toolkit and this resource will be of great value to your work. Do stay in touch and let us know if you have any questions, if you need further clarifications, and and if you need any more support, especially regarding the Listening to Girls toolkit and how to run effective focus group. You can find our contact details again provided below. And we thank you for all you do and the work that you continue to do for girls everywhere. Thank you and bye.